just tossed both manuscripts in the air and just decided to read the two that landed on top. So I'm asking you to take this journey with me, and I will first take you to church, and then I will drop you off in my bedroom. Sweat shines on the upper lips of big-hatted women. A red sea of wide hips and narrow minds twirling thick heat with images of Dr. King's face on the backs of bent paper plans. Praise from open mouths of sacrifice rattle stained glass windows. Sounds of glory pave over the dirt roads of last night's evil as the choir offers its first gift. Joyful, joyful Lord, we adore thee. She sits in silence on the 13th row, head bent down at an angle reminiscent of defeat. A lingering scent of sin right behind the velvet lobes of her ears, and sticky sweet between thighs too damaged to know how to stay together in quiet revolution. She lets fear from the corners of her mouth, struggling not to gag on rustic blades of self-awareness. Shame sticks like Velcro to the back of her throat. Grunts and moans of prayer punch the backs of pews around her. Hushed tears soak up the wood floor as the devil contorts beneath her feet. Her eyes roll into the back of her head where nightmares are kept on ice. Visions of diamonds dripping from the necks of demons used to seduce women like her down dark alleys where paper-thin souls go to be forgotten. But what of those who seek to be forgiven? And what of those who don't know the difference between the two? Memories curl like smoke around the edges of her sanity. Nameless smiles from men who offered to be her salvation, from a world begging to rip her young skin from a spiraling of sand. She was a sucker for slow-spreading smiles that spanned continents. Maybe only because hers wilted around the edges, knocked off like ash from the tips of cigarette butts, growing shorter and shorter with each use until really there was no smile left at all. If she could just manage to hook her suffering on the edge of one of those transparent smiles, and if someone actually meant it as they whispered promises of forever against her naked skin, maybe her own smile would be enough. Until then, she will sit on the 13th row in the name of false healing as the surface of her skin blisters against the word sinner, flung like acid from the pulpit. An accusation more familiar to her than the sound of her own name, and she clings to it as the only thing trustworthy enough to never let go. So, I woke up today and knew that the nervous breakdown I postponed last month was here to collect payment. I sighed and stared at my familiar reflection in the bathroom mirror, wondering when the things that promised they would change actually would. Smoke from incense dipped in sin danced and curled in the air like gypsy ghosts, and I wondered what it would feel like to dissolve like that from the inside out. This mirror in front of me tells a story of last night, an X-rated fairy tale of sorts. Me in the margins, fingered as you turn me over and read me like a novel. Don't put me down. Use me for what you will. Lips gently cradle, but your fingers lace loosely, and I slip through the cracks. Slip from the lap, slip from the back where your breath unravels my skin. Touch, but leave no trace. Pleasure is cruelty given in haste, and I open like a lotus flower teased by the tip of your tongue. Slow drip of sugar cane makes its way down my thighs, and you smile that smile because you think you know what's yours. You linger in my pores, and I hate this poison, but I must admit it feels so good. Jagged fragments of broken resolve and restraint lie scattered on the cold tile, beaming back at me in shame and guilt. Ash collects in the pit of my stomach as my sanity burns to the ground. White flames strike poses in between toppled teardrops, and I realize that I don't remember what it feels like to stop crying. Have you ever touched the sky on the wing of a prayer and fought for the right to stay there? Fingernails brittle from clawing to the top, but the bottom still scrapes the soles of my feet. Battle blood splatters white walls and bullet wounds fester over. If our love is a battlefield, then your words are grenades, and I harden to soften blow. You think I would know how to put one foot in front of the other and leave the trouble behind you, but you, my dear, are a drug. Not the petty shit that you roll in papers and puff past to the right in steady rotation. No, you flow through a needle, puncturing veins and littering my bloodstream with toxins only produced with the right mixture of love, lust, and self-hatred. Last night you told me that my skin smelled like ribbons of abstract thought. I wondered if maybe it was the faint scent of copper lingering in the dry bricks of blood around my bottom lip and on your swollen hands. It's funny what people are willing to turn into for love. Loose leaf dreams left to rot behind a coffin of apologies from you that I will never hear. Slivers of self-sacrifice slip into the cadence of my sleep, and if I think really hard, I can recall the rhythm of a hushed heartbreak. I fold myself in between the vowels of words left unsaid, and I feel my lungs fill and empty out, then fail. My breath on your neck woke you at 2:27, and I kissed a medley up and down your spine, just enough to forget the hollow crest that I bashed in your chest when I said I couldn't love you for one more day without dying. I got up this morning blowing kisses to regret sneaking out of my window. I stroked the velvet underbelly of our love with my tongue, and the familiar taste of grief consumed me. You kissed me like plaster, only drier, and I wonder if this is happily never after. Can you see change in someone when you're staring so close, or does it take a mile of indifference to perceive it? You looked at me with forfeit on your eyes, and as that demon on your shoulder grinned and bared its fangs, I know that you know that it's time to go. But what does that mean? What does it mean to promise yourself that things will be different tomorrow, as if the life you live today is not worth it? This wasn't meant to be easy, wasn't meant to be simple, wasn't meant to be acceptable, it wasn't meant to be delicate or painless or reciprocal, wasn't meant to be complete. It wasn't meant to be anything but what it is supposed to be, which means you aren't meant to be anything good for me. You ask me what I know, and I say not much, but I know better than to dust these broken bones under the rug, because my mama didn't raise no fool. And I know when you walk on legs of glass, you won't make it very far before breaking. When you play with fire, expect to get burned. And when you attempt to hide your ugly mistakes in the dark, someone, when you least desire it, will eventually meet you at your doorstep with a book of matches and a mirror. I hear that it's nice sometimes when memory residue tastes more sweet than bitter. I am here with an empty cup, waiting for when I can roll you around on the tip of my tongue, savor the smaller, better parts of you, and keep on going alone, straight ahead. Some delicacies are never meant to be reheated.